because mindfulness is without judgment. And if you are having bad emotions and you need to push them away, you are in judgment. Those emotions are unacceptable and they don't go away.
Welcome back to another episode on Find Joy with Joyan, the podcast that is all about helping you live and lead a life with joy. I'm your host, Joyan Chan, and every Wednesday we are giving you access to the world's best and brightest minds in their fields on our show. Listen in as these leaders impart their wisdom, inspiration, and stories to empower you to live joyfully with intention, passion, and purpose, and celebrate the struggles and overcome the challenges we may face each day with the tools and insights that we are going to share with you. Whether you are looking to improve your relationship, find your passion, learn how to embrace the present moment, deepen your spiritual connections, or learn the magic of manifestation and law of attraction to attract more abundance, this podcast is here to guide you every step of the way. As your host, I am also challenging myself to dig deeper to learn and unlearn and ride along with you. We are not here to tell you how to live your life because it is your life. But this life is all that we have right now. So my friend, why not live our life to the fullest? So I hope these conversations and stories will guide and inspire you to live your life to your highest potential and a life that you are proud of as you continue to grow and evolve in your own journey. So if you are ready to start living a more passionate, purposeful, and joyful life, join us every Wednesday on Find Joy with Joyan for inspirational stories, powerful message, fun conversations, and empowering thoughts with me and my special guests and friends. And now, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. She started her private journey as a young woman when she found herself studying Kung Fu and Qigong in Dongfeng City, China, the home of the famous Shaolin Temple. It was there she began a serious meditation practice. And while this skill takes years to develop, it was her first big step to understanding mindfulness practices. Her first book, Therapeutic Mindfulness, is a synthesis of her decades-long meditation practice and her work healing trauma and mental distress. As a licensed mental health counselor and certified EMDR practitioner, she has identified and embedded the factors necessary for healing into therapeutic mindfulness, a skill to facilitate one's healing journey. As a result, she has developed healing philosophies and the process of therapeutic mindfulness, which she practices personally and teaches to her clientele, and many of whom use it on their own. Therapeutic mindfulness has now been adopted for professional use by colleagues in the mental health field. And she's here today to teach you how to become a mindfulness ninja. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming the mindfulness ninja, Ruth Fearnow. Hi, Ruth. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Joyan. Oh, I gotta tell you, it is so funny to hear your life read back to you. Because when you're living life, you're just living life and you feel like a normal person. And all those things are true. But most of life is just I go to work, I come home, I'm like a normal person. But yes, all those things are true. I went to China because I had a friend who was in love with martial arts, always in love with martial arts. And he had this plan to go and he was telling me about it, but I think he would have chickened out. In fact, he told me later he would have. But when he was talking about it, I'm like, that sounds cool. Let's do it. And I had studied some martial arts, not Kung Fu at the time. So we just went to this school in Shaolin and stayed there for a month and we're learning a bunch of things. It was really interesting because I think I've always been interested in people. And I knew that there would be, it was exactly 12 hours time difference from where I live. So I'm on the opposite side of the earth. It's going to be different. I'm going to have different culture, different experiences. People won't have grown up thinking the way I do. And I found that fascinating. So So I enjoy Kung Fu, but I was interested in the people. And then the master at that school was also a Qigong master. And so we had a translator and he was teaching the Westerner group. So it was a pretty cool experience. That's when I really got serious. I would read about meditation. I would spend time in my room. I was really trying to understand it at that time.
Wow. I love that you just went straight into your story, because the first question that I wanted to ask was what inspired you to travel all the way to China and to learn about Kung Fu and Qigong, and you just answered that question without me asking. I love it.
Oh man, my mindfulness. Am I becoming psychic
You are.
ninja?
You are. So okay. So what were you doing back then? Were you already a mental health counselor, and why were you interested in Qigong and martial art?
Well, I worked in information technology at the time. I was 25. People just think it's so funny that I went from computers to mental health. But even in computers, they're like, how is it that you can speak human? Like the other computer people cannot speak English. We don't understand what they're saying. So, I was always the personable one of the computer folks. But yeah, it was just that friend did it. And I'm like, how often are you going to get an experience like that? I've always been curious about people and cultures and differences and what makes us tick. And maybe it's no surprise at all that I went into mental health,
Wow.
considering that interest. And also into my own mind, I've always considered myself a grower. Like even before that, I used to call it, well, I sometimes call it chasing wisdom. I'm always a wisdom chaser and synthesizing that information. So I was like that before. So if you kind of, look under the hood and see what's in my brain, it's not that surprising that I jumped at the opportunity that just popped in front of me.
Wow. Yeah. And how many years did you spend in China learning Qigong and Kung Fu?
It honestly, it wasn't long. We were supposed to be there just 3 months. So it was really kind of a catalyst that started me
Mm.
focusing more on mindfulness. But it was supposed to be 3 months. And then 9/11 happened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we couldn't get back right away, but we were like bewildered and confused and concerned, and we should get home, which I don't know why. You can't do anything at home, but it just, and there, the China story that goes long. Also, there are some things my friend, I think he's also a seeker in a different way though. See, to me, I was going there with open curiosity. I was fascinated to learn. For him, I believe he thought that the the history of Buddhism in Shaolin meant that there would be wisdom there that would help him figure out what hurt him. And when he went there and saw that it was just a school making money off people that visited,
Okay.
like in the Shaolin Temple in 2001, there was actually a gift shop inside the temple.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he became very disillusioned, very angry, actually. So he had a really hard time because he went to the place that he thought had all the answers and he found out it's just people. And he was very, very hurt. But me, it started me on that path. So afterwards, I bought a condo. It was the first place I owned. And I remember spending lots of time every single day trying to meditate after my China trip and trying to understand it. And it was hard. And then I found out, I started exploring different mindfulness exercises like guided visualization. Is not the same as meditation, but there's all these different ways to use mindfulness, and therapists teach it now. So if you don't mind if I jump forward a bit, so I'm,
Yeah.
practicing this for a decade, went back to school, got a master's and started working with people. And as an intern, I was taught to teach people what we call grounding skills. It's basically using mindfulness on sensations to bring yourself back in the present moment, and it helps calm your mind down. So we have to teach people grounding skills. And already, by this time, I'd been doing meditations, guided visualizations, all these different exercises for so long. I've been doing healing ones that I was using that as an intern with my clients. And so some people find it, well, when people first do these exercises, it's amazing. It's groundbreaking. It's peaceful. And as I grew in my abilities as a therapist, and as I became trauma informed and learned EMDR, and I do all these, like deep trauma stuff, that's my specialty with adults, I started seeing people that use mindfulness to avoid feelings.
How is that so? Tell me about it.
Okay, so I get a new person. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. And there's some exercises a lot of people will recognize. So a visualization, let's put everything in a box. Let's go to a safe place. Safe place is the beach or a waterfall or something. And then we'll have them describe, here's what you see, here's what you hear, look at the waves, listen to them crashing, feel the sun on your skin, smell the salt air, hear and feel the breeze, and all these details. And it gets them in that place. And so they're on the beach and it's so peaceful. And people that have never had, especially people with just chaos growing up, will be so amazed at the very fact that they can feel peaceful in their mind. It really is groundbreaking for them. And then they'll grasp onto that, and that's a good start. But then for some people who are super I never want to feel anything, I can't stand it. The moment they have a bad emotion, they close their eyes. Oh my gosh. Okay. Safe place. Go to the beach, feel the sun, hear the waves. And they'll try to push away anything negative using the beach. You see? So it's not just a place to go to have peaceful time. It becomes a way to push away negative emotions. And now it is no longer mindful, in my opinion, because mindfulness is without judgment. And if you are having bad emotions and you need to push them away, you are in judgment. Those emotions are unacceptable and they don't go away. See, so you can take a break from life. You can take a break from worry and do the beach or a silent meditation or a chakra meditation or a whatever you like. You can do any of the mindfulness stuff and have a break for your mind. But if you never are allowed to go back and feel what's coming up, then that stuff, all your hurts, everything, it piles up. It waits for you. It doesn't go away because I went to the beach. Does that make sense?
Totally. You are blowing my mind away. And I have so many questions, but I'm going to ask one at a time. Personally, I do guided visualization. I do meditation. I even went to the Vipassana. I'm sure you have heard of it. The 10 days Vipassana retreat, a meditation retreat.
Nice.
And I was just like, your friend that you mentioned earlier. I went there with the intention of, I was quite lost, I wasn't in a good place of my life, and I was looking for something to just to find an answer. I don't even know how to tell, I describe the feeling, but I just needed an answer. So I went. It was amazing, of course, but I didn't continue my meditation practice. So I want to hear how serious was your meditation, because Vipassana was quite serious. We meditated for I don't know, I can't remember 16 hours a day, just sitting meditations and no speech, no nothing. So I completed that and I felt amazing, but I found myself back in the exact same place before the retreat, right? So nothing changed.
Yes.
So
yes. Oh my gosh.
Why?
Yes, we have some things to discuss, don't we?
Yeah. So I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Here's, let me put it this way. I believe it is a wonderful thing. It's very helpful for your mind to spend time in peaceful states. We need to know it exists. We need to have mind training to apply other things. So you did not waste your time. However, if we only look at the light and ignore the dark doesn't go away. And that's why it's there waiting for you. Okay. So for example, I have a friend, we're having a chat and she is blown away because I wrote, long before I started writing the book, I wrote an article about this and she saw it on my website. So she's like, let's talk. Cause she had a podcast. This is years ago. And she's telling me Well, when I got divorced, I was doing lots of meditation. She really got heavy into her meditation practice, and she's in California. A lot of people around her were into that. And they're telling her, wow, you're getting so deep into your practice. You should study at the ashram. You should do this and that. You should, up your game. And then something in her instinct told her to stop meditating. And she actually stopped. And she said it was a year and a half after her divorce and she wasn't over it, but she stopped meditating and she felt the pain. And then she felt the pain pretty quickly and then she was better. So there's this thing she calls spiritual bypassing, where it's like we want to jump over the hard part and be peaceful already, you know. But I think we need to do both. So therapeutic mindfulness, which is, name of my book as well, it's about how to use it to go into the hurt, the anger, the depression, the judgment, how to go into the feelings and do some healing work. And it can be a short amount of time. It can be half an hour. And then you go back to your life, or you can do the positive. But if you never do anything with the negative feelings, they just wait. They wait and they stack up. And when you're done, your amazing retreat that was wonderful for your heart and your mind, or you've done your Netflix binge, Netflix binge, then it's all waiting for you. So spending some time going into it, because if you never go into it, then you're giving your mind the subconscious beliefs. I shouldn't have these feelings. I can't deal with them. They just need to go away. I shouldn't have to face them, or I can't face them, or they're too scary. And when we believe that, then every time we push it away, we're reinforcing fear or reinforcing resistance. There's a wonderful speaker author, you may have heard of her, Tara Brach, who wrote a book, Radical Acceptance.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because when I read the beginning part of her book, I already knew where she was going because she was talking about this. She was actually living in a community and following a guru. And in the morning, she would do her, deep meditation every morning, and she would feel really peaceful. And by the end of every day, she'd be right back to where she was. And I understood that she was only meditating on the positive and she was never looking at the negative.
Okay. It's also what I'm doing right now. So, I meditate in the morning after my yoga and I do everything, my morning routine, and I felt awesome. But again, when I started my day or just going through the day, and I felt all these negative emotions, and it's normal, right, as a human being. Or I
It is.
all these triggers, that negative emotions. And okay, so for someone who is feeling this negative and you said it perfectly, because in the past, when I felt all these negative emotions, the first thing that came to mind is go into meditation, like meditate on it, right? And I did, and I felt good. I felt like, okay, I am feeling my emotions, but I don't really know what I was doing. So now you are telling us to go into the hurt, to feel the sensations, to feel the negative feeling, and do the healing work. Like, how do we actually do that? Can you break down the process? Like how? I want to know how.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, just so everyone has this in the back of their mind, for some people, they'll be able to jump into this right away. And for some people, there'll be a lot of blocks, because the more you run away from them, again, it reinforces fear around feeling. And so my book is called Therapeutic Mindfulness, a Healing Skill, Not a Coping Skill. And I'm very deliberate about that. And so the process is actually very simple. It's very simple. But if it's hard and it just doesn't click like that, then it might be a good idea to get into the book, because it talks about resistance. It talks about judgment. With judgment, by the way, will block your efforts to heal anything. If you think you should be over this by now, you're stupid for having the feelings, they're ridiculous, and that makes you dumb, you will not heal, because that will block it unless you can get into a mindset of self-compassion and openness. So I talk about shifting the mindset. I talk about working with resistance. So there's a lot in there, but the process itself is actually really simple. And just so you know, everyone, I do have goodies on my website. There are downloads with the process and with the main worksheets that I give to my clients. So first, if we try to go into our body and feel what's uncomfortable, whether it's anxiety, we're freaking about it, stuff brings up anxiety for us and we need to control or avoid stuff. So if you have a lot of anxiety or something makes you angry or someone gets you down on yourself or something flashes you back to an angry father, whatever it is, the thing that triggers you, you can go into that emotion. But when you try to feel it, what happens is our brain starts talking. It just goes and it tells a story. You'll hear Brene Brown say, the story I'm telling myself is.
Yeah.
Because your brain is telling a story and it's saying things like, oh, well, here's what they were really thinking when they did that. And they're just being cruel, but it must be you. Everyone's always cruel to you. It always comes back to this because something's wrong with you. You're defective. No one will ever like you. You'll always be alone. It'll go on a rant like that.
Yeah.
And, is any of that rant familiar? Have you heard people talk like that?
Of course, you're absolutely right. I mean, we all have our own stories and we keep repeating those stories to ourselves over and over and over again.
Exactly. And so I think the reason why people don't go into emotions is they don't know how to. I didn't know how to, because once you try, your story starts going. And once the story's going, the thing about the story is every sentence in that, if you go back to that rant I just did, every sentence in that story justifies why you should feel bad. But not only should you feel bad, you should be feeling worse. And let me tell you why. So the longer you're in the story, the worse you feel. So no wonder we don't want to try to be with our emotions, because that story jumps in and it's just worse and worse and worse. So there is a solution. If you're feeling anxious, for you personally, Joyan, where does that show up in your body?
When I'm feeling anxious, I feel it in my heart or my throat,
Your heart.
like this area,
Ah, okay. And for you, is it a pounding or a squeezing or a heavy
I think it's squeezing. And
squeezing?
yeah,
Okay, so squeezing in the heart and the throat, that sounds really uncomfortable. But that is where you can find the healing. So in the process, first you identify a trigger. If you're already feeling, you don't need to identify something. But like if you have a daily meditation practice and you say, twice a week, I'm going to work on something that's hard. Okay, we're going to do nice meditation, but we're also going to do therapeutic mindfulness, which is a form of mindfulness meditation. And you're going to bring up every time my coworker or boss does this, or every time, my sister acts this way, or whatever it is that triggers you, then I feel something. So you can think about that and the feelings will come up. Once you have emotions present, the process is to get out of your thoughts and into your body. So I would say to you, if you're anxious, where's the feeling in your body? And you say, it's squeezing on my heart and my throat. Okay. And then I start to ask what I call body focusing questions. And these are on my website, so it's available to anybody. If that feeling was its own thing, right? It was its own physical thing. So I'll say, if the feeling had a size, how big would it be? If it had a color, what color would it be? Does it have a sense of hot or cold? If it had a temperature, and if it had a texture, what would it feel like to touch? These sound really strange. I almost hesitate to tell you what these are because people are probably like, I've never felt that. But I'm telling you, with very, very few exceptions ever, when I ask people this and I just say, just whatever comes up, don't worry about right or wrong answers. If they are in the middle of feeling it and they ask themselves that question, answers pop up. Sometimes sometimes there is a color, sometimes there is a temperature, sometimes they're not. But usually there's a lot of details that come up. And once I'm done asking the body focusing questions, for most people, if they're focusing on that, the story is actually gone or somewhere way in the background. And the feeling is vivid. It's this blue, squishy, heavy thing over their chest, or it's a tight fist in their throat and it's hot. Right? They can feel it, and I'll have them feel every inch of it. So that's the part where they get that focused attention. And then to make the magic happen, I tell them, okay, So you've got this feeling, it's tight, it's hot, it's squeezing in your throat, it's the size of a baseball or the size of a fist, and it's so uncomfortable. Allow it to be there. Give it all the space it needs. And I start talking to them. I have another worksheet. So the worksheets on my website people will want is the mindfulness process, which I'm describing, body focusing questions, and allowing phrases. Those are the 3 you want on your bedside. The allowing phrases is just a brainstorm of things that I say to clients when they're in this state. Let it be there. Give it space. Open up to it. Your only job is to observe. That's it. And what happens it's like the part that is a physical feeling in your body, it's like that's the hurt part of you showing up saying, please listen to me. And when we give it all our attention without any judgment, we don't say, you shouldn't be there. This is uncomfortable. I don't like it. We say, hey, I see you. You're hurt. And when we give it all of our attention without pushing it away, it starts to move and change and do things. Sometimes it gets smaller. Sometimes it spreads out and gets bigger, but it's lighter and lighter until it floats away. I see all kinds of transformations, but the feeling starts to heal. And the basic thing about that hurt part that shows up in your body is, I see this part of you is hurt. But when you do this, it doesn't have to be alone because you're with it.
When you say it doesn't have to be, you're not doing this alone, like, but I'm alone here. Like, are you referring to inner
Yeah.
child or your higher self or your soul, your spirit?
And we all have parts of ourselves. So I'm talking to the part that is hurt. The part that is hurt is here in my throat. The part that is hurt is heavy on my chest. The part that is hurt, I, Ruth, am talking to that hurt part. And I treat it the way I would a child. Just so everyone knows, if you talk about hurt parts or different sides of us, it doesn't mean that we're mentally ill or multiple personality or schizophrenic. It doesn't mean that. If I see an ice cream sundae, there's a part of me that wants to eat it and a part of me that says I shouldn't for my health. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just normal. And so there's a part of us that hurts and a part of it that thinks that we should know better, and a part of us that could have compassion for the hurt. And there's a part of us that could judge the hurt, right? We have these different aspects of ourselves. And so hopefully the ice cream thing helps people know, like, no, really, like everybody, I think, can relate to that. So, it's when you find a part of yourself that's hurt, there's, how when you meditate, so you're a meditator, there's an observer part that observes everything that's happening in your body, in your mind, or around you, whatever you're observing. You have that observer part that's kind of a higher perspective. That part, the thing that makes the observer part important as a meditator is that it doesn't judge anything. That's the part that you want to come up to the hurt part, which we described. It's a fist, it's in your throat, it's squeezing, it's heavy, it's squeezing your heart. Whatever that we described with all those body questions, that becomes the part that we're working with in our body. And the observer part that isn't judging says, I see you, I'm here for you. You don't have to be alone. And this really is the best way I can describe it. But I'm telling you, when the hurt part realizes that you are not going to push it away anymore, like sometimes it'll flare up and get big at first. And if you say, okay, let it be uncomfortable, give it space, then I see that it's almost immediately starts to relax again. And then it starts to become lighter and easier than where it started. And it gets better and becomes better, because it's as if it's saying, finally, someone's listening to me. I'm not being shoved into a dark corner. And the most common thing that people feel after this process happens and after the part gets really calm is relief. I hear it all the time, relief. And the last part of therapeutic mindfulness, just to prove that we're not avoiding it, I'll bring the painful thing back up. Okay. So you were out with your parents over the weekend and they said that thing to you, and it was how they've berated you your whole life. How, when you think about that weekend, how much comes back? And they're like, it's just like a nickel when it used to be like a boulder, right? That's what happens. They can look right back at the trigger and find, no, it's not coming back up. There's not that much pain as there was 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago. And that's the process.
Recently, I just because I always listen to my heart and just tune into myself and ask myself, what do I need right now? Sometimes is I need visualization. Sometimes
That's
I just
lovely.
need a background music. I'm just gonna sit there and breathe. Right, that's all I need. So, and I feel like sometimes I will work with my thought. I will work with my mind. I'm asking myself when I'm feeling the anxiety, for example, or I'm feeling any negative emotions. I will ask myself with intention, like, why am I feeling this way? Like, why am I feeling anxious? Why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling stressed? I will ask myself. So is that also part of being mindful, a therapeutic mindfulness practice? I just want to know, what am I doing? Am I doing it wrong? Am I doing it right?
The why is not part of this process, and there are a lot of tools out there that are very, very helpful, but this process is specifically out of the
Okay.
story, right? And I think we have a really strong compulsion to understand why. And sometimes insight is helpful. In fact, sometimes if you have a really big emotion that's big like a beach ball or even like a car, and then it calms down and it's like a walnut, say, when it's the size of a walnut, sometimes naturally, if your mind needs to know the why, sometimes those insights will come up. And of course, also as a therapist, or I can help people, tease out those connections. But the why itself, in my opinion, won't get you there typically. One thing I'll ask people that get really stuck on why, and I need to figure it out. I'll say, okay, so if you figured it out and you knew why, would you feel better? 9 out of 10 times they say no. 1 out of 10 times I do have someone say, yeah, I would feel better. And maybe they would, but I find most of the time why means if I could figure it out, then I could find a solution and I won't have to feel bad anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we ask why, because we don't want to feel. But what if you could just go into the feeling and not feel bad anymore? So I think there are times that the why can be relevant, but it is not my focus in therapy, because there's so many times that it will be revealed as you do the emotional work, but it is not the emotional work. Does that make sense?
Okay, now it seems like I have much clarity right now. Why am I asking myself why? Is because I want to find out what is my trigger, because I have no idea why am I feeling anxious. So I need to know, what is
Oh,
my trigger, what happened, right? So because sometimes I just feel anxious for no reason. I had no.
okay. I
Okay.
gotcha. Yeah, knowing your triggers are helpful because you can use them in your work for therapeutic mindfulness. So if you're anxious right now and you are able to, go sit in your closet or your meditation space or what have you and work on it, then you don't need the why. But if it just comes up randomly, if you can find out what triggered it, like if you can figure out, and it's not exactly why, like, why does this thing make me anxious? It's more like what made the feeling come up, because then later when you're doing mindfulness work, you want to work on anxiety, you can say, okay, so here are things that make the feeling come up, or here's a situation. And if you can think about it until you feel the anxiety, then you can stop the story, go into your body and actually do emotional work on it. So just to clarify, when I hear people talking about why, sometimes they're like, well, do I feel anxious because, my dad was always kind of on edge, or he would be gone, I wouldn't know when he would come home or not? Or is it because my mom was always trying to take care of everything and I just picked it up? And they try to analyze like that. And I'm like, well, if you figure out where you saw the anxiety, that doesn't fix it. You still have to be able to look at the thing happening today that gives you anxiety and sit with the anxiety and help it dissolve. Trying to figure out what the triggers are, that can be useful. And another thing about the triggers is if you figure out, here are the things that give me anxiety, then after you've been doing the work, you can go back to the triggers and you can find, I used to have such social anxiety, and now I went to a wedding and I forgot to be anxious. That's actually a client of mine.
Wow.
She cried after a wedding because she realized she forgot to be anxious.
Wow.
That one took a while, but she's able to socialize now. It changed her life, So knowing your triggers is useful to know where to start and know how to measure if it's helping or if you need maybe more help.
Right. So imagine, let's assume that we know what our triggers are, and now every time it shows up, we just sit there with the emotions, just observe the emotions. And I just want to make sure I got it right? And so we just gonna sit there and observe the emotions until the emotions start to release itself, or move around. How do we know when to stop, like when to come out of meditation?
That's a wonderful question. There are two reasons why I stop. The first one is the most common one. We're out of time. So if you have really intense anxiety when your mom's going to come over because she's going to criticize everything, you're like, oh, mom's coming over, oh, this is so uncomfortable, right? And as a therapist, I help you gauge it. I might say 0 out of 10. 10 is the worst anxiety you could possibly have. How bad is it? And you're like, it's an 8. Okay, so you're going to do the therapeutic mindfulness, and then maybe you have half an hour and then you have to be done. So you can check back in. Mom's coming over. How bad do you feel about it? It's about a 4. Okay. So half an hour is over. That's the time you have. It's a 4. Great. But what I would love for people to do, a lot of times this process, there are plenty of people that it's like 15, 20 minutes, and they do have more time. So, and a lot of times also the really big part of the emotion, it's uncomfortable. Once they allow it, it gets big and then it dies down really quickly. And then it's a 4. So if it's a 4 after 5 minutes and you have 20 minutes, I say keep going, because there's a lot more. It feels slower, but it's deeper work when you're getting from a 4 to a 3 to a 2. And 2 and below is awesome. But at that point, when you're down to a 2, people start to feel peaceful, relief, relaxed. You still feel the little knot maybe, but you feel good stuff. So that's the most common thing, is just here's how much time we have for it. And we'd like for it to be, 2 or below would be great. Once in a blue moon, I have somebody working on something and the feeling physically leaves their body. I've had it go down shoulders, arms to hands, and then it went out the hands and then it was gone. Or I've had it go up through the head and then it was gone. Whenever a feeling leaves the body, my experience so far has been that it is completely healed. I never see it again. They never see it again. Whatever the one specific little thing they're working on, they can bring it up it's gone. It's better. And so I still actually have them stay with their body a little bit, because once it leaves, what's in the absence, your breathing is open, you're light, your shoulders are light, your jaw is relaxed, your neck is open, your throat is open. So there's a lot of light, open, relaxed feeling. And I let them sit with that in their body for a few moments, just because it's so wonderful. And then they can be done.
Okay, what if we are not in the meditation? What if it's just day to day when we are in interaction with others, when we are out and about, or we are in a meeting, or we are at work, our colleagues are around, and we are feeling stress and anxiety and all these negative emotions? What happened, and what do we need to do in that moment when we are not really, setting aside time just to meditate and work with the emotion, but it happens throughout the day and anytime, anywhere, right? Unexpectedly. So how do we in that moment? What should we do?
I love that question. You can't always leave a work meeting to go
Yeah,
meditate, right?
boss, I gotta go and to meditate.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, boss. Got to meditate. I'll be back in 15. Yeah. Absolutely. So this process and this book, I wrote it because I believe there's a gaping hole in our tool set, right? So we know how to meditate. There's a lot of teachers out there. I was not planning on writing a mindfulness book because there's so much good stuff out there. I know some things, but there are people that know more than me. It's just there's so much good stuff out. And there's lots of good coping skills. There's a lot of things out there. I wrote this because how to directly deal with negative stuff seems to be the missing piece. Now, what you're describing is how do we get through the day? And that's coping skills. And they're taught all the time. I do have a positive psychology chapter in my book that's like gives you some of the brief overview, but anything that your therapist has taught you, anything that helps you, anything that you've learned out and about, the coping skills are okay. Here's my thing about that. Whatever gets you through the moment, the coping skill is a wonderful short-term tool.
Can you name us some of the coping skills? Because I just want to make sure people are really, because we don't really know whether they are coping skills. We thought they are healing skills, right? But what are some of the common ones?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm in Walmart and something happens and it makes me want to cry,
Okay.
I could cry in Walmart. That's okay. I could cry at the grocery store. It won't hurt my life, but it's not my preference. I don't want to cry in the grocery store, right? And so one thing that I know how to do is to count things. I will look and count, and this is one of my favorite ones to give people. If you need to wrap up emotions right now, then count everything that's yellow. Count everything you see that's red. Count everything you see that's black. Another one, actually really powerful one, and people hate to do it. They hate it. They're really emotional. Emotions getting really intense, and I know that they have to wrap up. They have to go somewhere. So I'm like, I give them multiplication tables. Do math. What happens is you're shifting from emotional brain to logical brain. So I can do some hard times tables in my head, or I can count what I see, and that will get me through Walmart or the grocery store without crying. And then when I get home and I have time to myself, then I'm going to say, so what was that? And I think about it and the emotion comes up. Now I'm going to work on healing. Okay. Another reason why you might need a coping skill, if there's a car accident, you're in a car accident or something scary happens, a medical thing happens to a family member and you have a child, you need to hold it together so you can show the child like there is stability, the world is not falling apart. We will get through this. So you need to stuff things down temporarily to help the child. Later that night, when the child's finally to bed and soothed and you have time alone, you have all your own feelings about it. And that's when it's time to switch. So all the coping skills, counting and doing math are my favorite ones. People may have different ones. The mindfulness stuff, one thing therapists like to teach for that is any of the senses. So some people will notice, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I hear? And there's so many lists of coping skills. Some people will have mantras or have things that they say to themselves to get them through something. I know somebody that had panic attacks and his thing is, I have God behind me. He's a religious man and, I can get through this with God's help. And he would tell himself that to get him through something. So what we do short term to get through is what everyone that's been to therapy, or if you explore those, you can look up, you can Google coping skills. So all those things are valid, are useful short term. And the big thing that I'm doing different is they're useful. We need them. But after you're out of the situation, what do we do long term? So we don't just hold on to anything from our past. And that's where this is different. So hopefully that clarifies.
Is crying a coping skill? Because I'm someone who cries a lot. So
Okay. Disclosure, I'm a crier too.
yeah.
I don't know. It's just feelings. It's just, you're allowed to have them. A friend of mine says crying is emotional
Yeah.
detox.
Yeah, it's a release, right? And they say, yeah, it's cleansing. So I just want to hear from your perspective.
I think crying is cleansing for most people. I know that people that will have chronic depression where they'll be depressed literally for a year or two straight.
Mm.
For them, crying goes along with the story running in their head, making them feel worse and worse and worse, and perpetuating it. So it's like crying is normal and natural and something that we should always allow ourselves. Remember, allowing emotions to come up is just fine. If that's all you do, then maybe getting with somebody to shift things or find something else to break that habit, that cycle that's keeping you depressed. That's one thing. So there are times when it is too much, not because the person's too much, but because it's not getting anywhere. But if you cry and it's a release and you feel better, then your answer is in your feelings. You know, you've talked about, and I'm really glad you did, listening to yourself, listening to your heart. So you know there's a release when you cry. So for you, it's very helpful.
Yeah, I love that. So the next thing, or maybe the last thing that I know I could talk to you for hours, like we said in the beginning, the last thing I'll talk about is trauma. Like, how can can someone truly heal if they have a lot of trauma from the past? And what does the first step look like?
Those are awesome questions. First, if they have a lot of trauma, the very direct answer I have for whether any particular person can do this is maybe.
Okay.
So I do have, and in the book, before I actually describe the process, I have a warning in there, and the warning is, I give a list of what we call dissociative symptoms. If your avoidance is so strong that your mind leaves your body, and there are people that have this. The mind is very powerful, and it can actually give you a sensation of leaving your body, of blacking out, of losing time, of going blank. If you have really intense leaving your body experiences, or feeling like it's not you, feeling like you're in a body but it's someone else, then you need to work with a trauma therapist.
Wow.
Okay. So yeah, and I don't know, I don't know how much exposure you've had, but being a trauma therapist, there are people that need to start slower. But so the real thing is, can you tolerate some emotions? And if you can tolerate feeling, then you can do this. If you can't, then once again, I would suggest working with hand in hand with a therapist. But if you think you can tolerate a little bit, then you can start with a quick body check-in. And this is the first exercise I have to build skills. Some people are already comfortable with their own emotions, comfortable with crying, comfortable with feeling heaviness in their chest or whatever, and it doesn't scare them. But I've also had people that feel very unstable or have difficulty connecting to any emotion in their body. And so I have a really quick check-in, and I simply say, what do you feel? Where is it in your body? And it's like 30 seconds, and that's it. So what do you feel? I feel anxious. I feel nervous. I feel shaky. What is that like in your body? Well, my hands are shaking, my arms are shaking, and my heart's pounding. Okay. And that's it. And I just have them do the check-ins regularly. When you're calm, okay, you're getting ready to go to sleep. What do you feel? Where is it in your body? Well, I feel relaxed. My chest is open. I'm breathing. It feels good. Okay. Do it every day when you brush your teeth. Do it every day when you're in the car. That is a beginning way to start to connect to your body. If connecting to your body is very frightening, then you need help from a trauma therapist. That goes back to the more extreme reactions to some bad trauma. But there are a lot of people that have trauma who can feel. So if you can already tolerate some emotion, then you can go ahead and use this. And that was the first part of your question is, let's see, what about trauma? And then how do we start? So how do we start? If you want to start, if you're uncomfortable in your body, that would be just checking, where do I feel, or what do I feel? Where is it in my body? If you are comfortable with emotions, then you can start with the whole process. You pick a trigger, and I've got those handouts on my website. Pick a trigger, go into your body and try it. if you have really big stuff from the past that seems overwhelming to do, but you can handle emotion on smaller things, then start on smaller things. I don't want to deal with how my dad beat up my mom, but I can deal with maybe my boss yelling, which kind of feels really scary, but not so scary that I can't handle it. So my boss yells, and that's what you can start on. So, anybody that does therapy with me will find that I'm really big on intuition. We have answers if we learn how to listen. So, if it's uncomfortable, you don't want to do it versus it's overwhelming and I will black out, you know?
Wow. Yeah. I find it so helpful because most people want to deal with trauma head on, right? They would just want to cure their trauma or heal completely. But you have to start small with, like you said, maybe an emotion that is not so overwhelming as compared to the big trauma that you had in the past. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for everything. I personally feel
You are.
this episode has helped me a lot.
Oh, I'm so glad. I hope it gives you ideas. I have the material out there. By the way, my name is Ruth Fearnow. Last name is Fearnow. Yes, like be afraid right now. So fearnow.com. I do have a downloads page. If you want the processes there, and if you want to see it more in depth in the book, I talk about resistance. I talk about troubleshooting. I give a lot of examples of clients that have allowed me to use their stories or just general stories of things that happen. So you get to see what the process looks like, because it is strange to people that if people are really logical, then it can be very confusing. And I get so many people in the beginning that say, am I doing this right? And I'll say, yes, you're doing it just fine. Stay with the emotion, So I have a lot of examples there to help you see what's typical. So, yeah, I'm glad you find it helpful. And I'm just excited that I get the word out there and I get to share. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And you just gave me an aha moment. Like, I just finally had an answer. Like, why am I so stuck or whatsoever? Because
Mhm.
I'm very analytical, and I'm also very
Yes.
emotional. And like, okay, so I'm analytical and I'm also very emotional. Like, okay, this is like I'm stuck in between, right? Um,
Mhm.
do you have a solution for me? Like,
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's funny because the solution is something I've already said. That's getting out of your thoughts
okay,
and into your body. When you're into your body, I truly believe that our subconscious mind or our higher self is at work. And you can't do it with logic. In fact, at the beginning of the book, I compare logic and emotion as different layers of the mind.
mm,
So I can't fix a logical solution with emotion. If I am a mechanical engineer and I'm building a roller coaster, I can't do it by feeling good, right?
yeah,
You need logic, you need reasoning and math and all the things. You need logic to do that. Same way with emotion. If I'm feeling panic, I can't fix it by telling myself, well, no one dies this way. It'll be fine. What I need is compassion and attention and courage to face panic. So you need an emotional solution, and that is getting out of your head and into your body. Once you're into your body, your subconscious mind takes care of the rest.
beautiful. And thank you so much for taking your time out in the early morning to join us. And we always end with our final five rapid fire questions. So every question has to be
Oh,
answered in one word or one sentence maximum. Yeah, here's the highlight. This is the highlight of well,
let's do it.
podcast. Okay, so the first question is, what is one thing you wish you knew earlier?
Oh my gosh. How to feel?
I love it.
All this.
Love it. Yeah. Second question, if you could live your life all over again, what would you do differently?
Oh my gosh. It sounds weird because I know so much now and I can see mistakes, but I don't want to give up the learning I have because I have the chance to help people. So nothing. And I've screwed up, but nothing.
I love it. Awesome. That's so beautiful. The third question is, what is something you're trying to learn or curious about right now?
Something I'm trying to learn about myself. Um, So I tell people all the time, like, I promise I have the bad brain thoughts too. I have the things, and I'm trying to overcome some stuck things that are triggered by parenting. I became a stepmom and I have closeness with my daughter, but I find that attachment distance with one of my early caregivers rears its head in fear. And so learning about that, learning how to work around all those blocks so it doesn't disrupt my relationship with my daughter is a big thing in my life right now. And I think once we're done fixing one problem, another one comes up, but it's worth it because it deepens our ability to love and have relationship, and it's absolutely worth it. But that's just one of the things from my childhood that has come up for me. And that's what I'm trying to learn and heal about myself.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, because it's no use if you have all these tools and strategies and resources, but you are not really using it in real life, right? It's yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah.
yeah, we have problems.
I practice what I
Yeah, yeah, we have problems every day, and it's not the problem is not having the problems. The problem is not having the tools to deal with the problems, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The next question: if you have 5 minutes and the whole world was listening to you, what would you say?
Sorry for the silence. I'm like, whoa. I was hoping it would be if you could wish one thing, and that would be to make ice cream a health food. That's an easy one, but it's not that. If I had 5 minutes, um, okay, I have it. There are people out there that understand happiness and healing.
Mm.
If you want that, search it for it.
Wow, it gives me goosebumps. I don't know why. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, because a lot of people are struggling and suffering alone, right? It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. That is gonna be a beautiful piece of message. The last question is, what brings you joy?
Family. Back to that family. That's the biggest thing. Helping people and being a ham on stage. I like to act in community theater.
Wow,
So those are the things.
beautiful. And I think I just saw your cat or your dog, in the background.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's ready to go out.
Yeah. All right. So I know you mentioned about your freebies and all the good stuff for us to download. For people who want to work with you or get to know you more, or just connect with you, or if they have any question, where can I send people to you?
So there is a connect on that. That's the ruthfearnow.com is speaking, that's speaking and book and the downloads. But I do have another website that has kind of my therapy info, and there is a Facebook. So Facebook page is probably the easiest. So if you look up the Happiness Project Fort Wayne, you'll find it, or it's also facebook.com/calm to happy, CALMTOHAPPY, calm to happy. And I just do occasional posts, but people can contact me with that. And also if I have speaking engagements or a book signing or something like that, I post that also.
Beautiful. I love that. Calm to happy is perfectly aligned with the name of my podcast is about finding joy. So all right,
Yeah.
guys, I know you love this episode. If not, you wouldn't be listening to the very end. So go follow Ruth, go to her website. She has a lot of freebies for you to download, as she mentioned, and connect with her. And I'll put all her links in the show note below. So make sure you go and check it out and learn more about start your own healing journey. And to learn more about what I do and to connect with me, follow me on Instagram at joyan.chan or visit my website joyanchan.com. And we release new episodes every Wednesday. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss another episode. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you every other episode. Show up, the world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning to Find Joy with Joyan podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can help support this podcast in one of three ways. 1. Take a screenshot of this episode and share it on your IG story and tag me at findjoywithjoyan_podcast so I can repost and connect with you. 2. share this podcast with a friend or a family member. And 3, leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to grow and reach more listeners worldwide. Make sure you also subscribe so you don't miss out on any episode coming Wednesday. Thanks for being here, and I will see you soon in the next episode.